Hey, this is Johnny Jackson, and we are in North Kakalaki at an undisclosed location. We were here a couple of weeks ago, and we're back at the same place. We had some things happen, and I have my lovely wife Victoria and Inspector Gadget, Terry Windell, here with us. And so we're gonna talk about some things and ask some questions, and we're trying to figure this thing out one question at a time. Good to have you back, Terry.
Thank you, thank you. And apparently somebody knows we're here. There's an airplane looking for us, apparently.
Yeah.
Did your beacon go off?
Wasn't me, I didn't do it. I don't know.
And we also, by the way, we do have Cowboy. He's laying over here behind.
Can't do this without Cowboy.
But we had a nice little hike earlier, and this is a really good place. We're pleased with it. We've been here about 4 or 5 times now, and it seems like we're getting some activity, so we've come back. So Victoria, you want to start us off with some questions for Terry and about what happened before?
Well, Terry, last time we were going over the audio, you said something interesting happened.
It did. And you hear about this all the time. Well, not all the time, but you hear about this, and I don't really know how to explain it, but right now we have basically the same setup that we did last time we were up here. We have a cell phone that's recording on a tripod. We also have an external mic, a shotgun mic, that is set up down on a little table below us here that you guys can't see, and it is recording into an external audio recorder. The camera and the shotgun mic are not connected in any way. So there's 2 separate audio files, and there's a reason you do that for editing and stuff. But anyway, the camera, and the important thing to remember, the camera and the mic are completely separate, and they're generating their own audio files. Last time we were here, we did this, and didn't look at the footage. I just looked at the footage enough to see, yeah, we got footage and everything. Everybody's smiling and it looks good. And then we all went home, because it was, by that time when we left out of here, it was probably, what, 3 in the morning, something like that.
Late.
2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I think I might have gotten home at 4:30. So I slept the next day, and then got up the following day and got the file in the computer and went in and matched the video and the audio up, and I'm sitting there listening to it, and I hear about maybe 5 or 6 minutes in, as we were chatting, there is a burst of static, and it comes and goes. And the first thing I thought was, oh well, it's you know, something in the audio, in the mic. You know, we got some noise or something. Okay, but at least the camera's got separate video or separate audio with it. So I'll just look at both of those. It was in that as well at the same time. Now again, remember, the camera and the microphone are not linked. So whatever it was external, because it picked up on both. And the only way I can describe what it sounds like is if you Google search dolphins and infrasound, prey stunning, infrasound, this is what it sounds like. It's a high energy burst. I haven't looked at it yet in the spectrograph to see what frequency range or anything like that. But I do remember some sounds in a video that I had seen where some people went underwater and recorded dolphins communicating with each other with this, and then they were using it at a higher level to stun their fish, to stun the prey. We know that certain animals do that. Elephants do it. Tigers can do it. It's above what we can hear, or below what we can hear. So we don't know it. We can't pick it up as humans. But the camera and the audio did. The microphone did. So now the question is, where'd that come from?
Yeah, because we're a good ways from any road or any body. What, a mile up in the woods?
Easily. There is nothing around us. There were no other electronics anywhere around the equipment. So this is real interesting, and this is just, like I tell people, strange things happen in the Uwharrie.
Absolutely.
We'll do a little more research on that, and I'm curious to see tonight, after we do this, if we have the same thing show up. Because that means I've checked the equipment. I don't think we have equipment problems. I think we had somebody that was interested in us.
So when you first come out here, you've been doing this a while, just like Johnny. When you first come out here, we were unloading. This was the first time first interview. You were unloading. We were talking back and forth, and you just stopped and you looked actually over toward the area over my shoulder, and you said, I feel something going on. Do you always have that feeling when you have?
Well, that's the same. I call it my tinglies, for lack of a better word, because it's kind of like you're tingly a little bit. That's the same feeling that I would get on my grandmother's farm as a child. I just didn't understand what it was. It didn't make any connections because I didn't know about Bigfoot back then. I was young. And I just chalked it up to, well, that's just what it feels like to be me walking in the woods. But as I got older, I started noticing it didn't happen all the time. It was just in certain places. Now, I'm not trying to say by any stretch of the imagination I have superpowers. I am not psychic. I make absolutely no claims about any of that stuff. But it was just really weird. And I've noticed now the more I do this, it's kind of like you get a feeling that somebody is there watching you.
Well, in law enforcement, you would call that a sixth sense.
Correct. You just kind of get the hair on the back of your neck stands up a little bit. It's not a scary thing. It's just a
On alert.
It's like if you walked into a dark room and couldn't see, but somebody else was in there, you could sort of feel their presence. That's kind of what this amounts to. And again, I make no claims that I am any kind of paranormal anything. I am not. If I was, I'd be in Vegas, playing the odds. But this was just something that just happened, and it was like, wow, this is really interesting. I've felt that before.
But Johnny, you also felt that down here before.
I have, and me and Cowboy's been in places before here when it's like the law enforcement, the sixth sense. It's like, most of the time people don't get that anymore because we've become so, I guess, civilian or civilized to the point where it's not like it used to be. But, I've hunted all my life. I've been in law enforcement. You were in law enforcement. And you've been doing this long enough and been with the right people in the right places that we develop that sense more. But yes, Cowboy's been really good about letting us know when things are close by. And we've been in some places where I just knew it was time to stop and not be there any longer. We got out one time over on another location that's not a long ways from here, but as soon as Cowboy's feet hit the ground, he started growling and looking into the thicket, and I had the same feeling. He didn't have to even tell me. So we got in the truck and we left, because there's sometimes you just don't have any business there at that time. So yes, in the sixth sense of law enforcement, we're in, when you're walking into that house or you're searching that building, you got that feeling.
Or turn down the road.
You just know, and that's kind of what it comes down to. But for you folks out there, the more you do this and the more you get into the woods and the more you exercise those things, the more you're going to get to where, you just feel things, you just know things. And it's not, like Terry said, it's not magical. It's something we were created with. We've just lost a lot of it.
It's kind of like intuition a little bit.
Yes,
exactly.
Everybody has it.
It's just, and again, it's not, I think anybody can do it if you just learn to listen to that little voice in your head that everybody has that tells you, don't do this. And when you don't listen to that voice, you end up getting in trouble.
Wouldn't the key to that, I agree everybody has it, but would not, the key to me would be to slow down in life enough to
pay attention. Just pay attention. And we are horrible at paying attention. Human beings are horrible data recorders. You guys in law enforcement, I can't even begin to imagine the number of hours that you have to go through so that when you go into a crime scene, you pay attention to every single little thing. And, you come back and you write it down, and then you read it again, and, you you get questioned about it, and you go through so much training just so you can make a list in your head of where everything was, what it looked like, and who was there. And if you're not trained to do that, half the time most of us will forget what our phone number is by the time we put our phone down. We're just horrible at it as human beings. That's just one of our traits.
So, just because I kind of seem to be the new kid on the block with you two, because I really didn't come out a lot till I married Johnny. You guys met in Uwharrie, and you both had interest in life, and some interesting stories that brought you here, and that kind of brought you guys together. You've been going out ever since. So I guess my question for both of you would be, you hear a lot about Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and there's people out there that, I know when my question is longevity, how do they not get the dental disease or diseases? And one day I realized they probably eat herbs take the kudzu vine. That is a Chinese herb, literally, before it was deemed a weed in the United States for being invasive. But in the South, that's an herb. But it's good for high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes. But what do both of you think the key to their longevity is? Or what do you think their lifespan even is?
Well, Uwharrie has always been a good place. We used to go to Uwharrie a lot back in the day, and sometimes spend 3 days.
We had a friend that was up here about every weekend at one point.
Yes, and me and Cowboy spent a lot of time in Uwharrie. So Uwharrie was a good place that we used to go to, and then we found these other areas that we go to now. But I believe they're created just like we were created, and they eat natural things, and they know what to eat, and they know what to do and not to do naturally, because everything is God created as far as I'm concerned. According to Scripture, everything was created by God. So I think they eat what they need to eat. They know, just like, we've become so civilized that we eat whatever's there because it's been placed in front of us, and it's so processed, and we could probably live a long time too if we would eat right.
But Terry, that would go back to what we're talking about, the mushrooms, because we just found some.
Oh, there's gorgeous mushrooms in here. One of them is as big as my head almost.
And we were talking about how
I think it is big as your
head.
Now, don't take that the wrong way, guys. Don't take that the wrong way.
It was big.
This thing is huge.
But we were talking, how does wildlife have a sense to know not which mushrooms not to eat?
Yeah. I think they know innately. Birds know what berries to eat and what berries not to eat. If by nothing else, by attrition, because the ones that eat the bad stuff die, and the ones that don't eat the bad stuff live, and so the ones that are prone to eat the bad stuff get.
It's probably it was an acorn, I think.
Yeah, we just had something fall.
It's over there to your left.
Yep, we think it was an acorn or something. So we're just going to keep going. But if we get up and start looking around, you'll know what's going on.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. We'll bring you back. But as far as longevity goes for Bigfoot, there are animals that just normally live longer than we do. Elephants, turtles, giant tortoises live 100 easily, if not more.
One of my favorites.
If you own a giant tortoise, you actually have to have in your will who's going to take care of it, because it's going to outlive you, chances are.
Yeah.
So I think Bigfoot probably just, if they do live longer than us, I think it's just natural. But going back to what you were talking about with the natural edibles and stuff, we're up here in the mountains of North Carolina. There's ginseng, there's beetroot, there is, you name it. You mentioned kudzu. Yeah. All this stuff goes back to medicinals back before we went to the doctor and got a prescription for something. Most of the drugs that we have come from something in nature. They may be massaged, and I heard that too. They may be massaged and altered a little bit, but most of them come from nature. Native Americans and a lot of native people, Aborigines, will tell you that the Creator did not put anything harmful on this planet without putting something to cure that harmful thing on this planet. You just have to know what to look for. And we've kind of lost touch with that because, again, we just take off to the doctor or the pharmacy and
That's
get a
right.
prescription, and it comes in a little pill. You know, back in the days of our grandparents and great-grandparents, they made it. You know, they went out and picked it and made it. And we just don't have that anymore.
So, I guess I think my biggest question is, you had your childhood experiences that brought you here, but you also had, you know, I don't know if you want to get into it, something in your childhood that actually brought you here too. And do you find that as you get older in life and people are more open to Bigfoot, do you still find people are skeptical?
I think there's more people accepting now than they used to be. I know when I first got started as a teenager and probably 13 or 14 years old, and my buddy's mom took us to see the old Sasquatch movie. A lot of people's never seen it, but we went and seen it, and that fired me up to think that one of those could actually exist. So I kind of went on the hunt even as a kid and got hold of every magazine I could get hold of, every book I could get. I remember writing letters to Peter Byrne when he had the Oregon Bigfoot Center, and you know, just read everything I could get. Got responses from him. Even wrote the military and got a response from them. And I still have the letter to this day that they actually sent me in regarding to Bigfoot. And this has probably been 40 years ago or better. And now I'm telling how old I am. But in reality, even back then, the military sent that letter and said that alleged Sasquatch samples that were looked at by the FBI, they were unable to determine that any such animal existed on the planet. And I got that letter, I still got that letter that they sent me way back then. So, you know, I got out for a while because I had children and life goes on and you have to go to work to eat and all that kind of stuff. And 30 years later, I'm back in and met with the fella who actually, I did my first interviews with him and his family who had, you know, they actually seen a Bigfoot and experienced it and took cast, and so I was able to connect after 30 years.
But he also got ridiculed, didn't he?
Yes, he got ridiculed somewhat, but there were people during that time that was his age, because this happened back in 77 and 78-ish in Chatham County, Lee County area, and there was a lot of sightings during that time there, and I got a chance to interview most of those people, but most of us catch some ridicule. I caught some ridicule from the guys at the police department, which is okay, you know. It's all in fun for me, because I kind of like being different anyway, you know, and saying,
yeah.
you know what, I'm glad I'm not like y'all anyway, but most of the people who ridicule you have never been there, and they've never looked at the evidence, and they've never interviewed the people who really saw something. So they don't know. I just brush it off and keep going, and I don't even care what people think, to be honest. And the older you get, the less you really care about what people think.
In fact, in this line, this area, most of the people that ridicule you have never even been in the woods.
Yeah, and
That's
so
true.
So anyway, the early experiences, and then later on in life, and you know, I've not actually seen a Bigfoot face to face. But I've been a lot of places and had a lot of evidence and had a lot of things that were there. Now I did get a picture here several years ago with an infrared camera that was in the woods, and but as far as seeing it face to face, I have not. But I'm still looking. We're still doing this thing, and I believe it'll happen eventually. You know, there's a lot of things in the woods other than just Bigfoot. I mean, you know, I used to believe that all the stories that we hear, you know, the dog man and the different things were just fairy tales and people thought they saw them. But I actually interviewed a fella, and we're not going into the interview, but I actually interviewed a fella who I knew for a fact, him and his wife both, they were not lying. They saw what they said they saw. And that kind of caused me to start looking more into just something other than Bigfoot. So, and I know you've seen some things and a couple of times and got a video that maybe one day we'll put it up here so people can see it, with what you saw. That was not normal.
But now my interest started in childhood. Now you've been back to where I grew up, and most of my I really don't call it research anymore. I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
And because even if I had the opportunity, I don't know if I would want to prove it exists, because people have a tendency to destroy what they say they want to protect. And as people, when we touch things, we destroy it. Land, you name it, we do it. But the intentions straight off are good, but it seems like the more we get involved in things, the more we kind of destroy them. So I took Johnnie to the area where I grew up, and it was all state forest or game land around us. You literally had to know someone to have a home in this area. And what was not owned by the Forestry Service or was game lands that was owned by paper mills. You had nothing but pine trees and swamp and everything else. And I remember we lived out in the middle of the swamp, literally. And I remember my mother getting up before sunbreak, because we had to drive so far in town, and so before the sun come up, she was having to get up and get ready for work, because she had this really long ride into town to go to work. And I remember she screamed, and we jumped out of bed, went running in, to the bedroom, and she said something really huge was looking in the window. And the window was probably 8 feet off the ground, because you built your houses high up on a foundation. And she said it had bright green eyes. Well, I'm thinking mountain lion or something, because we had one that would go through the area. And this was also the area where you had the Beast of Bladen County area. I mean, literally a couple of miles from it. And so that's kind of what started it for me, because I knew we always knew there was something there. Just like they said, we didn't have big cats, and we had big cats that crossed our property all the time. But I'm thoroughly convinced something. My mother's window being around 8 foot off the ground, and she said big bright green eyes wide apart is the way she was hysterical. But we moved probably 6-7 months after that. My mom could not get out of the swamp fast enough. But that is always, I guess you would consider it coastal swamp is where I go.
Okay.
But the more I've gotten out and I started interviewing people, the more I realized that a lot of the Bigfoot or Sasquatch in North Carolina they're not the big patty type. They're slender, they're athletic, and they're muscular but not overly.
They vary just like, I think they vary just like human beings do.
Yeah.
We don't look like each other. We have the same traits, but you go, the ones out in the Pacific Northwest are huge.
Huge, yeah.
But look at where they live. There is food out there like crazy, and it gets cold, and they need to be bigger. They need more body mass to stay warm. Skunk ape in Florida is reported to be thin and kind of svelte looking. It's hot down in Florida. A big, massive body in Florida, you would pass out from the heat. So I think they're different, just like we're different. They're all basically the same, but they come in different shapes and sizes, just like we do.
Most of the reports I've gotten in North Carolina have been slender, athletic type. And if you look at the video I got, this thing literally turned its head and just kind of didn't turn its shot. I mean, it was the head. You could turn its head. I know a lot of people say they can't move their heads without moving their shoulder, but it had the black leather, kind of leather type face, and it just literally just turned. But we had probably 30 seconds of total silence, and we never knew we had it on video. We never knew what we're looking at, and it just kind of once again went sucked right into a kudzu vine and was gone.
Yeah.
But most of the people I've talked to North Carolina, I spoke with someone that at the time was real high up in politics, had a lot of game land. He didn't want his name told, but the first time he seen one on his property, he thought someone was trespassing on his property, but it cleared a 8-foot plow cut in 2 steps. And it took him a moment to realize that that was not someone in a ghillie suit.
That's big.
Yeah. And his son had seen the same thing, but they described it as the fur having that wet deer look. But they've seen it multiple times, but it's always been kind of slender, athletic. And that's my experience from dealing with people. Now, the two of you could be totally different. I know what Johnny got on FLIR that night looked like a patty type to me.
Well, it wasn't as tall as some people say 10 foot tall. It looked like it was maybe 6 foot tall, but it was broad. It did look like its shoulders were broad, but it wasn't a 10 foot. And I've been to Ohio and interviewed people in Ohio, and up there they seem to be taller. Some of the folks that I've interviewed have actually had things to measure them up with where they were actually standing, and they were 10 foot tall. But I agree with you. I think it does depend on, where they are, and I mean, it may be like a gray fox and a red fox. It may be two different species of animal in a sense. Yeah, and look how many different kinds of birds you got, little, big, and so it could be something to do with that, because you have your 3-toed tracks, you have your clubfoot tracks, you have your 5-toed tracks. So I think it depends on, we don't know exactly which one you're dealing with, so I think that has something to do with it too.
Terry, so this is for you. Do you think that some of the Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and I just say both for preference, do you think some of them are more carnivore eaters and where others are a lot more vegetation? It's like coyotes. There's a study done in North Carolina where coyotes toward Fort Bragg, or Fort Liberty as they call it now, it's Fort Bragg to me, the coyotes there are strictly berry diet, and they're scat. But when you went up more toward the coast, it was more like a meat and berry. Do you think there's a difference?
I don't know. It's a very good question. I think probably you would need to look at what was available in the areas, because I think they're kind of opportunists as far as Bigfoot and food. They'll eat whatever they can find. That's why when after the weekends, we would, we never went camping up in Uwharrie on weekends. We would always wait until everybody left, because that's when the Bigfoot would go. Oh, the people are gone. Let's go look at the trash cans and see what they left us. So I think they're kind of opportunists. I think they probably eat both. With gorillas, especially, one of the reasons gorillas have this big gut on them is they eat plant matter. And like a cow has a big belly, gorillas have that kind of big belly because they need to digest, they need to break down the grass and all the vegetation, the leaves that they eat. So maybe it's the same with Bigfoot, I don't know. I think they would probably eat deer if deer were available. Would they eat a person? I don't know. I hope not, but I don't know.
At least not tonight.
Yeah. So if anybody's out there listening, we don't have any catch-up, guys. We're sorry. But I think it probably just depends on, for them at least, what's around. Just like if we went to the grocery store and they didn't have brand X, we're going to buy brand Y. Peanut butter to us is, we'll get this brand. We like this peanut butter. If they're out of it, we may get this peanut butter.
So I think I pretty much asked all the questions that I'm curious about. So I think this is probably where I would need to drop off and just let you two have.
Well, I'm just wondering, what do you think with the questions you've asked us? I mean, we've talked a little bit about what they eat, and you from down there where you guys were at, abundance of both.
Well, the ones we were looking at, actually, my best friend has them on her property. You know who I'm.
Right.
That's where we found the 3-toed track. I would think those are a little bit larger because she's got the turkey farms, the chicken farms, but she also has a blackberry farm right next to her. So there's a combination. And it was on her property where the way she become kind of interested in the subject was she found a very large track in the middle of her driveway in the middle of winter. and she, she was leaving her driveway and just happened to look, and there was a bare foot like in the middle of her driveway, and it didn't dawn on her, hey, it's in the middle of winter.
Is those three toes similar to the ones from Cumnock area?
The original one she found was like the normal Bigfoot you would see with all the toes and the
5-toed.
Yeah, but when we went scouting her area, and a lot of weird things happened. We got the weird thing in a tree that you saw that was looking down at us, and it was like someone put a lab puppy in the top of a tree.
Huh.
And we found the 3-toed track, but the 3-toed track looked like it was following a bear track, a smaller bear track. So on that day, that when it comes to infrasound, or now that day, twice on her property when we've been out, my heart rate got exceedingly fast, where I had to sit down and get myself together. And the only time that's ever happened to me was on her property in the same spot. And so that's where my curiosity come from, like the frequencies and what you can hear by ear and what you can't hear. She also caught sight of one behind her horse barn, but she also has a black panther on the property she has pictures of.
Right. I remember them talking about that.
And so I think, like in her area, you've got the chickens, you got a hog farm, you got the turkey farms in the area. It's a farm community, but you also have the blackberry farm the blueberry farm. So I would think something like what's in her backyard would be a lot larger than the swamps where I normally do, where you probably just maybe would live off of fish and kudzu or nuts and stuff.
Or other animals.
Yeah, or other small game, but
well, I think we're gonna call it quits for this one. Right. And because what we're gonna do is when we post these, you guys will be able to send us some questions, and maybe we'll get some answers out to you what we think, and we'd be interested in hearing what you think too.
Yeah. I did want to ask one more thing. I wanted people to get to know a little bit about Terry, because it's easy for people to tell their stories and you have no clue who they are.
Right.
Terry, when we were out here the last time on our ride back home, we were chatting, and I asked you, about you and your wife and how she took things. Do you want to just quickly tell the story about how you broke it to you?
Yeah. My wife and I have been married. We've not been married for terribly long, but we were childhood sweethearts, so it feels like we've known each other forever. We got kind of separated in school and got back together about 12 years ago now. And she was living in Georgia at the time, and I was living in South Carolina. And we kind of knew pretty quick where this was going to go. We just kind of hit it off. So at that point, I was doing Bigfoot stuff, and I was really interested in it. And I just kept thinking, well, I got to tell her one day. And, my house at home, at that point, until my friends found out I did this and started giving me all kind of Bigfoot posters and stuff, I didn't have any Bigfoot paraphernalia in my house. Nobody, if you'd come to see me, you wouldn't have known what I was doing. So I was like, golly, I gotta tell her, because what if she thinks I'm nuts? She needs to know. So I took her out to a restaurant, because I figured she couldn't make too much of a scene in public at a restaurant. She couldn't, she could throw food at me or something, but she wasn't going to run screaming out or anything. And so we finished our meal and we were chatting, and I just kind of thought, well, I got to do this. So I took a deep breath and I looked over and said, sweetie, we're getting pretty serious here, and there's something I need to tell you. I just feel like this is something I really need to tell you. I don't want there to be any surprises. Just so we know each other, and I'm really not sure what you're gonna think, and I understand if it upsets you or makes you feel, whatever, but I understand. But I need to tell you this, and she's just got this look on her face like, oh dear God, he's an axe murderer.
Or worse.
And so I just said, I'm a Bigfoot field investigator. And she sat there and didn't say anything for what felt like an hour, but it was probably just a couple of seconds. And she got this strange look on her face, and I'm thinking, here it comes. Okay. And she looked over at me and she went, Terry Windell, is that all? That's it? Oh my gosh, I thought you were on the run from the law. I thought you were, that's all? Oh my gosh, tell me more. So she has never had any kind of experience really. We got growled at one time over in Uwharrie, but that could have been a mountain lion, now that we know that there's a mountain lion population here. But you know, she believes that I believe, and that's enough for her. And I really do, you know, she puts up with a lot of stuff, because as Johnny was talking about earlier, if you're upset by being called foolish or called names, this is the wrong place for you. And it doesn't bother me, it just rolls off. But you know, when there's another person in the equation, I want to make sure that that person doesn't get the brunt of that, or is the same way with me and it just rolls off your back like water off a duck. So she is pretty much just, you know, she's resigned to the fact that that's just what Terry does. He may be crazy, but that's what he does, and I'm okay with that.
I'm waiting for you to bring her with you so
Soon.
we can hang out.
We're trying to work that out. It's tough for us to both be gone at the same time. And she's really involved. She's got a yoga practice and a yoga website, and teaches online and in person. So she stays busy.
Could you just put out there her website?
Oh, sure. Thank you. It's Bunny Dog Yoga, all one word. BUNNYDOGYOGA.com. She's also on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram right now. And you can find her all Bunny Dog Yoga on all of those. And the reason it's called Bunny Dog Yoga is we had a apricot labradoodle who came with Tammy when we got married, and a couple other dogs as well. And they adopted me. I didn't adopt them. But Bunny was special. Bunny was people, just walked on four legs. And she would go with Tammy when she would do yoga and lay at her feet. So it's kind of,
I think that's great.
and I see Cowboy
Hey,
is
buddy.
wandering, speaking of dogs.
So I appreciate you telling us that, because you always hear the experiences and you hear the people talk, and you talk at a lot of seminars, but those little stories like that, there's so many stories like that. To me, it just completes the circle of who you are, and I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
sharing that.
Well, thank you.
Is that all for this time?
It's up to you guys.
That'll be all.
Guys, I think we're going to get ready to cook some food. We're going to throw some stuff. We have a little grill over here, and we're going to throw some hamburgers and hot dogs on here before it gets dark. So we're going to let y'all go for this episode, and we'll be back here or somewhere else shortly, and we'll let you know if anything else happens tonight like it did last time, and as we try to figure this thing out. So we're out of here. Thanks a lot.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Later. Tell them bye, Cowboy.